As the great Al Davis said, just win, baby, win. It is the Exit 52 podcast presented by Jimmy's Famous Seafood. Friday, the 13th, Friday, September 13th. My name is Jake Luke, and I'm joined by Spenny Home Opener. How we doing, pal?
Doing well, excited, fired up for this one. We're going to get into the Raiders. We're going to get into the Ravens, talk a little bit about maybe the history of these teams. We've got some clips. Cole may be joining us here at some point once he finishes his probably goodnight, lullaby, bath time, all that good stuff. But I am super fired up. Home opener. How can you not be, especially coming off that loss? Kind of felt like a preseason game a little bit. I don't know if we're all alert, alive, awake. I feel good, though. I'm fired up. Raiders fun. I do want to get the take in here that the Raiders – and I'm gonna maybe tilt this more to the fans, but also as a whole. Al Davis, we talk about Jerry Jones a lot on here. The Raiders fans are like what the Cowboys fans think they are, especially maybe before. I don't have a beat on them since they moved to Vegas necessarily. This is their first trip here since they moved to Vegas, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Yeah, so don't have a beat yet. Whenever the Raiders come to town, I've seen some crazy fans going nuts. They fight, they get crazy. They've got like I am 6'4", really lanky, and I've been to jail twice. Like I have 17 prison tattoos on my forearms, none of them connected vibes, which I like. I like those vibes, but I know the last time they came here, I remember there was some terrible things that went down in that stadium. I think one of them assaulted the shit out of a Ravens fan, and it was no bueno. So hopefully none of that.
I think that was 2016, or no, it was after. It was after
2018.
2018, because
Lamar's like second start or something.
Yeah, it was Lamar's rookie year. T-Sizzle had the scoop and score, just an absolute blowout. But I also think back to that 2016 one where Derek Carr threw like 4 touchdowns. Crabtree had 3 of them. That was one of the more brutal losses. We talk about the Orioles and the Ravens overlapping. That was that 2016 Orioles season. I remember that was game 162. Tommy Hunter screaming, how about Kevin fucking Gosman on TV? That goes right into the Raiders game. And it was just as high as you could be as an Orioles fan, and then as low as you could be as a Ravens fan, taking that loss in their house. But there have been games since then. There's been that 2018 one, obviously the 2021 opener out in Vegas. I think that might have been that first game in that Roomba Stadium that they have, and that was a tough loss as well. Interesting history between these two teams. And the Raiders fans you mentioned, I like that you start off with them because interesting crew. And it's funny, you see all this outrage every time teams move. I think rightfully so in a lot of cases. There really wasn't with the Raiders because the Raiders just have fans, particularly all over the West Coast. Like they have people in LA, they have people in the Bay Area, they have people, throughout this kind of area that they're in now, and all down through New Mexico and Texas and all that. They're just kind of everywhere, and they make their presence felt in these games too. So I'm sure we'll see plenty of them out there on Sunday.
We certainly will. The Ravens' first ever game was against the Raiders, September 1st, 1996. The Ravens win. Ernest Biner with the go-ahead touchdown, I believe, in the fourth quarter there to take that one 19-13.
Ray Lewis with a big interception in the end zone. Really
game clincher there. Game 1. Got it all started. The Ravens really owned this from the beginning until through that Super Bowl season. They walloped the Raiders 55-20 in 2012. Then the Raiders have had their number a little bit. They are 3-2
AFC Championship. Can't forget that. Ravens' first ever.
Tony Siragusa, rest in peace, cracking the ribs of Rich Gannon, beating the crap out of him. That was one of my first real memories when I was alert, alive, awake as a child.
Getting a lot of mileage out of that lately, by the way. I'm not disliking it, but we're getting a lot of mileage out of it.
I say it during the day. I say it to everyone. Alert, alive, awake. I'm going to say it in these situations here. I'm going to take one filibuster second here.
One filibuster second as this guy, he talks about being alert, alive, and awake. He talks about doing this. He talks about doing that. And now he walks off and leaves me by myself as he filibusters.
There we go.
Now he's back.
We do have the owner of Baltimore's best coffee here, my boy Tyler, Morning Mugs.
Oh, hey, Tyler. Looking good with that stash there. You're putting us to shame.
Yeah, you got to grow that out. The coffee stain right in the morning, just so you got that smell all day.
Tyler's got a face for TV, a voice for not radio.
It's kind of doing it for me. He's kind of got the gravelly tones going on. It feels like he could be calling like an NFL Films Raiders game back in like the 80s or something like that.
The Raiders. Give us one of those. The Raiders.
The Raiders.
Oh my God.
What I'm talking about.
He was made for it. Thursday Night Football score prediction.
Oh, I'm thinking high-scoring game. 2 powerhouses coming in. I like 33-31. The Bills, baby.
Ooh, Bills, 33-31. There we go.
Invading South Beach.
Of course. So yeah, gonna have some folks coming in. You might hear a little noise here. We're gonna get some poker, some Thursday night football. But
It's
yeah,
poker.
Tony Siragusa, we mentioned that AFC Championship game, and now the Ravens opening at home. Jacoby Jones, rest in peace, man. That's gonna be very emotional. I was thinking about that a couple days ago, and I'm gonna feel a little overwhelmed. I think a lot of Ravens fans will, as I'm sure they'll have a touching tribute to him and Joe D as well. Of course, Joe D maybe not quite of a known public personality the way that Jacoby Jones was. He was an offensive line coach, but that one might hit a little harder for Ravens players and the organization who have been around him for the last decade. So storied kind of some rivalry here a little bit. We talked about the first game. Raiders, an interesting team coming into town.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a lot of fun. They're, kind of nebulous right now. It feels like they're transitional period for them. Gardner Minshew at quarterback. They got AOC, who you love for a lot of different reasons, backing him up. A lot of calls for AOC, Aiden O'Connell, actually already coming out of that week 1 game that they went into SoFi Stadium and lost to the Chargers, obviously. So they're coming in here at 0-1. Ravens are 0-1 as well. There was a soundbite that came out in one of their press conferences that I probably should have pulled the audio for, but it's kind of grainy. It's not the easiest to hear, but you have one of these reporters that's covering them, and in the press conferences, the presser mic is like hot, and the guys don't realize it because Minshew or whoever it is that's about to talk hasn't come out yet. And they say something to the effect of Gardner's going to get his ass kicked by Baltimore this week. Some Derek Carr pot shots taken in there, just total ricochet shots. Is saying, did you see Derek Carr the other day? I fucking hate Derek Carr, but that was an awesome game by him. And obviously that's just a total Derek Carr. Kevin Hart, what are you saying? Fuck me for, or was that who? That wasn't Kevin Hart. Who was that?
Who are they talking about in terms of the
the meme? What are you saying? Fuck me for?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's someone.
But yeah, a couple fun sound bites. Davante Adams, I think you have clipped here too, talking about Lamar Jackson and the impact that he's had on Davante Adams' game, which was a really cool quote.
Yeah.
Well, he's who I think I mentioned it to y'all. I don't know if it was this year or last year, but going into my 21 season, I felt like that was an area, broken tackles was an area that I really wanted to focus on and push and make better. And I was literally finding myself watching Lamar Jackson highlights like in my locker before the games. Like, dude changed the game. He's the best, in my opinion, best ball carrier ever. No matter what position you want to talk about, I don't think anybody's as big of a threat carrying the football. So, and obviously he's worked really hard to develop in the other parts of his game as well, and you've seen that come a long way too. So, he's a huge threat. Somebody you gotta be accountable for out there, and make sure you know what he's doing, and getting on the film of that. And obviously, I don't have to worry about that, but yeah, he's a hell of a football player.
Yeah, there you go. So greatest sort of, ball carrier of all time, he's saying there. It's obviously very high praise. I don't think it's the hottest take in the world. A lot of people have, sort of made that very same case. It could be him. It could be Barry Sanders. It could be a couple different people, but I guess we can just jump right in. Ravens offense versus this Raiders defense, who kind of got carved up a little bit on the ground by that Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman rushing attack last week with J.K. Dobbins busting a couple big runs. Justin Herbert sort of doing just enough through the air. I'm sort of wondering, is this the Derrick Henry breakout game? Is Lamar Jackson going to run it? Probably not to the extent that he did last week, but do you take advantage of that? Is that sort of how you're attacking this? My brother actually we were talking before we got going here, his fantasy team, he's got Isaiah Likely, he's got Dalton Kincaid, and he's like, do I start Likely? Do I go with Kincaid? I was like, well, maybe they try to work Mark Andrews back in a little bit this week. It feels like a good tune-up game for that, but I'm sort of at a loss here. I don't know how they're going to attack this, but I will say I am expecting this to be the Derrick Henry game. I'll say that right off the bat.
Yeah, certainly. Patrick Graham, the Raiders defensive coordinator, watching through that unit, they play some physical ball. It starts with Max Crosby, starts with Christian Wilkins, so they gave a huge contract too. Then you look at that secondary, Jack Jones, feisty dude, Nate Hobbs, Jacorian Bennett, Trevon Merrick, who I think has come into his own a little bit here. Good Lord, take a look at Max Crosby there and the tats. Max Crosby gave the Ravens a lot of trouble, right? Alejandro Villanueva and the Ravens offensive line situation there. Feels like the Ravens are a little better equipped. Ronnie Stanley had such a rough game coming back from injury when we think back to that. But Patrick Graham is going to rush you. He is going to apply pressure. These DBs want to come up and hit. They are uber physical. They're going to get after it. And I saw a team that really didn't allow much to the Chargers. They gave the Chargers fits. The big play that happened that kind of put them behind the eight ball was Gardner Minshew just kind of dribbling a ball out of his hand, trying to throw it to Davante Adams and maybe second guessing himself. Chargers pick it up. Kind of reminded you of where the Ravens played the Colts last year against Gardner Minshew and had the opportunity to maybe scoop and score. They can't grab the football. And then the Chargers kind of turned it on a little bit from there. But I was really impressed with that unit. Max Crosby, of course, they move him around. You can try to slide to him. You can try to do this, that, and the other, but they're going to stunt. They have pressure looks. They use their linebackers to mug up in the A gap. I will say, of course, there is not a running quarterback, run game, option game threat. So you want to use that against them. We'll take a look at some stuff, some numbers, things like that in that regard. But this Raiders defense, man, I was relatively impressed with their unit. I think that they were in sync. I think they communicated well. They were doing, like I said, a lot of disguising coverage, changing up their pressure looks. They used a lot of five-man fronts, which I think the Ravens need to take advantage of by spreading the field. Five-man fronts with kind of two outside linebacker types or Crosby, and then three big bodies inside. I would love to see the Ravens use 22 and 12 personnel and stretch the field laterally a little bit so you can attack the middle of the field. But was pretty impressed overall. I mean, the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh has those guys gnawing at the bit. They wore them down in the first half, just ran the ball into the abyss and into the void, I should say, and then finally busted through late in that game and made a huge impact. So this defense is a unit that has some players. Patrick Graham's an experienced DC. He's impressive. And Antonio Pierce, of course, a guy that's focused on that side of the football as well.
Yeah, definitely. You've got Robert Spillane there at linebacker, who Ravens fans should be familiar with from his time in Pittsburgh there. Obviously, standing next to him is Divine Diablo, which, I mean, what a name, right? I mean, it's an amazing name. It's a little oxymoronic if you think about it. He's a Divine Diablo. But yeah, I mean, not the best PFF week one for him, 29.4 overall grade, but Spillane, a good one with an 84 grade. So didn't really watch a ton of the tape outside of my guy, Scott Hansen and Red Zone there, but it sounds like he had a good one. And then at corner, it's kind of a hodgepodge. You've got Jack Jones, who's had some nice moments throughout his career coming over. Jacorian Bennett, who you mentioned, had a nice week one. Nate Hobbs is kind of their nickel guy. He's been a solid player throughout his couple years in the league, too. And then obviously we both loved Merrick coming out of TCU. So he really has come into his own. And then it's Crosby, it's Christian Wilkins up front. And then just a couple other guys, Janarius Robinson, Adam Butler. These are a little bit more, I wouldn't say no name, but a little bit more anonymous to your average fan type players. So maybe you try to stretch it to that side with Henry, like you said, open up the middle of that field, hit a little bit of play action. Maybe you get a likely on a crosser or something like that. And I do want to see, for as far as what I want to see, I want to see some vertical attack of the football field. I don't want to see a ton of Zay Flowers bubble screens. I understand why they did that. I remember Cole in the group chat making the point about how it's the extension of the run game, which we like to talk about. I think that certainly holds true. But the Ravens just went into that Chiefs game just saying, look, we're just going to take what they give us. And they did a decent enough job of that. But I want to see them challenge vertically. I want to see them maybe get Zay Flowers involved deep early. I want to see more Isaiah Likely, maybe get Mark Andrews involved underneath and just pound the rock with Derrick Henry, man. Like, let's, you don't necessarily want to have to play the PR game and try to win the PR battle every single week. But I think it would be, everyone would come out of this game feeling pretty good if you manage to, cover the spread or close to it, get Derrick Henry a ton of touches, keep Lamar Jackson untouched and clean. I think that's really all you're going for here in a home opener against the team that you should beat.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'm looking to is the Chargers don't really have a lot of. I mean, Quentin Johnson does have some. They did get him the ball in space. J.K. Dobbins did make a nice play. They blocked up a play well, but the Ravens have more dynamic players in space. I'm looking at Zay Flowers. I'm looking at Isaiah Likely. We'll see Mark Andrews maybe play himself back into shape. I thought he was a little better than given credit. The box score stuff people are always going to go a little bonkers with, but Lamar Jackson, man. And I want to see them. There's all this talk. Lamar Jackson ran 16 times. It's sustainable. The media is asking him about it. I want to see them run him early. I want to see them get out, use some of those quarterback bash concepts, some of those quarterback powers, use that motion run the other way. Set that early because that is going to slow the linebackers down. Then you can get away from it. I want to see just one or two runs in the first quarter, attack the perimeter a little bit, use Henry in motion like we saw, like we broke down on the jumbo set last episode, and then start coming downhill, then start feeding Flowers to the perimeter a little bit more on the other side. So I want to see them get Lamar involved early. And these linebackers, I like what I saw, especially out of Spillane, who's quietly been one of the better linebackers in the NFL over the last couple of years. I think he did a really nice job getting to depth. He maximizes his athleticism. If he's mugged up and needs to spot drop and go get to a landmark, he's getting back. He's hauling back. Whereas contrasting, I was watching the Chargers linebackers were kind of not, I'm going to say alert, alive, awake. They were kind of going through the motions. They were kind of 1,000-yard stare, sitting in their zone, have no idea what's happening behind them. We'll talk about the Raiders offense and the Ravens linebackers, but I was impressed there. And move the pocket. Let's move the pocket away from Max Crosby. See if they can move the pocket and get these guys running across face. Some sprint outs, some boots, some things like that. Let's boot away from Max Crosby, get a hand in his face. The Raiders have their own kind of dynamic duo on offense. The Ravens, in terms of tight ends and 12 personnel with Bowers and Mayer, who I was really impressed with both of them, and I like the usage of them. Likely and Andrews, use those guys. We'll see how much of a Pat Ricard game this is. I think that it seems like Henry likes Pat Ricard more than anyone that's ever known Pat Ricard. He just talks about him all the time, loves him to death. So they'll work him in. But I'm looking to see if he can spread the field a little bit, find the middle of the field. And man, the pass protection is the big question, right? We'll see the Ravens be at home. There will be less noise. They should be able to communicate more cleanly, earlier, more freely, to hear each other, hear the calls, know the cadence, all of those kinds of things. So what we saw the Ravens pass protection do, they lost. Like we talk about Voorhees, we talk about Falele, we talk about Rosengarten. When there was help, when for instance, the big example is the strip sack, but it happened several times. Rosengarten has help inside. He loses to his outside. He lost in the wrong fucking spot. He let someone go across his face, let him go right when he has help to his left. So hopefully being at home helps them iron that out, communicate a little bit more cleanly, and shore some of those things up. But moving the pocket, I think establishing the quarterback run game early, and then starting to use those playmakers, the Batemans, the Likeleys, the Flowers in space a little bit more is a helpful hand. And Justice Hill, man, let's never forget about that guy. He is quicker. He contrasts Henry well, much like Tajay Spears did in Tennessee last year. So getting him the ball in space a little bit, throwing some little swings to him, some screens. Let's see if we can see the Ravens work Justice Hill over the middle of the field. Let's see if they can get him on some choice routes, some angle routes. Let's see if they can give him some two-way goes against linebackers, see what that does too. So I don't know that this is a game. I like Justice Hill's pass pro. Derrick Henry knows what he's supposed to do. He's never really been like prime Zeke Elliott in pass pro, knocking guys' socks off.
And when you got Justice Hill covering big ass number 95, that should not be going on. If you play football, you know this. Which is
if you play football, you know this. You know this.
Which is a real quote from Lamar Jackson, by the way, not AI.
That was not AI. No, definitely not. Definitely not. Just a 5-minute clip that sounds like it was in a tin can on a.
It was 1 minute. It was 1 minute. It was 1 minute.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, so
don't know.
I want to see them get the backs out of the way. Maybe use a tight end to chip a little bit more. Let's get out of Lamar Jackson's way. Let's create space for him to move. And again, if he gets rattled early, that's the plan. What's the plan for the Raiders to me? Get pressure early. Try and see if you can hold up against the run game. See if you can get Lamar to start playing backyard football. And this is going to sound dumb. Here's my dumb thing of the day, probably. Justin Herbert hurt them with his legs a little bit, a couple of times. He had some nice little scampers. I'm curious to see if Lamar Jackson, like, as a scrambler, it sucks when he gets 20 yards, but I'm going to dare him to house it, scrambling. Like, are you going to go out of bounds, go down, go slide, see if the DBs and linebackers can kind of flood the middle when you know he's scrambling, and see if he's just going to kind of go down. It extends drives, but I'm willing to live with that a little bit. If I'm the Raiders, I'm willing to live with him scrambling for the sake of getting pressure on him. I like that trade-off if I'm the Raiders.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And I think, a couple things to hit on there. It was good to hear from George Warhop today, who they brought in kind of impromptu here to replace Dallas Andrews as their offensive line coach. I think he had some nice comments on Roger Rosengarten and kind of laughing off him coming in for his first snap and allowing the strip sack there. We both kind of, I think, were chuckling at that. You might as well, it's like the mental miss with the putts. You might as well just get it over with. You already missed it. Just step up and, maybe it'll go in. Sometimes it goes in. Sometimes you stop Chris Jones. That time he didn't. But it sounds like they're confident in him. I'm curious to see if the platooning stuff is going to continue this week. I think there was some griping about it last week by us and some other people in that type of environment. But this is an environment that I think you can afford to mess around a little bit. Obviously, Crosby on one side, you don't want to mess with that too much. Like you mentioned, probably chip guys that way. But you're doing that on the other side to begin with anyway, with Falele and with what you got going on at tackle with McCary is kind of a sort of, backup plus type guy who did start for you last week. Are you going to kind of work Rosengarten in early? What's going to go on with that? And overall with Jackson, I like the point that you hit on there that you want to see them run him, and I think they will be confident in it. And I think this game has already, because of the Minshew factor, drawn some comparisons to that Colts game last year, that the Ravens should have won 5 or 6 different times. And part of that was Lamar Jackson's running and the designed run game where he scores a couple of touchdowns. It just feels like they were on a completely different level. And then the random Harbaugh loss just kind of rears its ugly head out. And, listen, he only lost 4 or 5 games last year, but that was certainly one that they should not have. And this, I'm not saying this has potential to be that, but just go out there, be who you are, run Jackson a little bit, get Henry in the mix, like you mentioned, set up the play action, get Likely going. And like I said, try to hit a bomb to Flowers, try to get these wide receivers involved a little bit more too, because Bateman 2 catches, Aguilar 1 catch, and whatever else they had going on. That's just, I don't know if that's going to work for me. I want to see a little more diversification.
Yeah, hit the flats a little bit, run wide. I think you want to see I'm going to get into the Raiders defense here, offense, which I have some clips of I'm going to pull up, but attack the outside so you can soften up the middle. That's what my general strategy against the Raiders is. See if you can get the ball to Flowers. I don't mind the RPOs. I don't mind the bubbles. I don't mind the extension of the run game. Work them. I'm like getting to the point of running the football. Like it doesn't matter what the result is because of the impact of it.
The Chiefs, I mentioned this the other night. They had like a 10 out of 10 tackling night too. Like you're not going to just get
Justin Reed. Those guys played.
Jalen Watson, a couple nice plays. McDuffie is just a beast in that aspect anyway. Like that's a Spags thing. Like and you mentioned Graham is solid, but like this is
when you're confident in your assignment, you tackle better. And I think that Spags has those guys confident. I think Patrick Graham does to an extent, but that's a great point, Jake. So I wanted to talk about the other side of the football here. We've got some clips, and I'm going to pull those up here. So first thing I thought was just funny. This is kind of general football note. This I think is on the Raiders' first drive. This wind back motion stuff. The Chiefs ran it. The Ravens actually ran it. The Lions ran it. I think like 17 teams ran this play where you see the tight end wind back. It's the Shanahan wind back, go upfield. This one's not like a big gain or anything. I just think it's funny. Everyone on earth is running this play. So I'm curious to see how DCs start to combat this. Is where I would love to see what Mike McDonald has to say here about how to shut something like that down. It might be passing off tight end motion, things like that, but I just thought that was interesting as a little side note here. We see the Raiders, the iterations of this offense, it's kind of like Peyton Manning style West Coast stuff, where they come out and the variation is like there will be one gentle little motion. Minshew moves up to single back. They do a little bit of pistol. Their formations are pretty relatively tight. They'll go empty a little bit here. They just want to throw the ball over the middle of the field. Gardner Minshew can't drive the football. He cannot. That is not in his bag. He does not have a sting. Yeah. He doesn't have a piercing 3-iron flight in his bag.
That's just like what you get with more limited quarterbacks too. It's a lot of middle of the field, just, drop back. What do I see right in front of me? Pull the trigger. And when you have Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers too, you're going to want to be working that a lot.
Exactly. So we see the Chargers play like a cover 4 here, open up the middle of the field, and they want to feed Davante Adams. Here's my 2 stupid statements. I said the thing about Lamar Jackson. If I'm the Raiders, I want to get to the other angle here so you can see this linebacker when I said the alert alive awake, number 0, who tackles really well. I don't even know who it is, but you can see him kind of just sitting there, just reading Minshew, just flat. Ball goes right over his fucking head. There's a big void in the middle of the field. Big gain. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to give the middle of the field. Maybe you can let them have it early. Bait Minshew into that comfortability, which I would really, really, really like, and then start to flood the middle of the field. Davante Adams, they are forcing the football to him. Their receivers, I think Trey Tucker is dangerous, but their receivers are not dangerous after the catch. Davante Adams is not dangerous after the catch. That quote about Lamar Jackson, he's over 30. He's still great. He's a great route runner. He catches the ball well. He's physical, all those things. But I'm just not worried. Again, next play here. I think this is actually the actual next play. Davante Adams, the middle of the field's open. This big void, even though it's a middle of the field closed coverage, is a single high coverage. Looks like, I think, cover 3. And we see this big void. Davante Adams is just going to snap back into the middle of the field. And Minshew just puts it on him. Nice clean pocket, gets the ball out early. Minshew, if you give him the middle of the field, he's going to attack it. He's going to get the ball out on time. That's what you want to avoid. You want to make him throw longer distance to the sideline for shorter gains. The irony of this coming up is that on the next play, which we should get to, that little point from Davante Adams was funny. Now they flood the middle of the field. We see them, the linebackers flooding the middle of the field. They're all off. And so what does Minshew do? swings the ball out to the outside. All the receivers are pushing forward. We're going to see Madison, who had a nice game here, looked awesome. They're going to swing the ball out to him. Got to tackle. If that's your game plan, you got to come up and tackle. And the Chargers do not do that on this play. This early touchdown is just Minshew flipping the ball out into space. And he does this sweet little hurdle, takes 2 guys out, and dances right into the end zone. This was an awesome play to watch. If you didn't watch this play, would highly recommend going and taking a look at it. Madison's opening touchdown.
And we talk about the tackling too. Like, that should not be a touchdown. Like, if you're Zach Orr and you're giving that up, like you're lighting into whoever had the angle there.
I mean, you don't even have to. Roquan Smith will probably bludgeon himself in the head with a rock if that happens on his defense, right? Like, he's not going to be about that life.
Continues to be on the injury report. Roquan Smith limited today. It sounds like he's fine, but he's got a shoulder thing going on.
I think he has a bum shoulder, if I had to guess. I haven't heard anything on that. He had a brace last year. He's a linebacker in year 7, year 8? Probably year 8, I would guess. Maybe a year before Lamar Jackson, 2017, 2016.
Same year. They were, because he wore 18 because he was 2018 guy.
You're right. Yep. Same year. So he's probably got a bum shoulder. So he's probably gonna give a beating to himself and to everyone else all year. So he's gonna have a bum shoulder. The usage at tight end was great. Mayer and Bowers really impressed here. This is the first play. I just kind of got into the sequence here. Again, they go man coverage. Mayer boxes out, a nice catch. I think this needs to be a big Trenton Simpson game on tight ends. That's going to be me calling my shot here. Then they go in tight here with heavier personnel, and they're going to run play action under center, kind of the first one we see. Bowers has an awesome route. The middle of the field's vacated, and then he just breaks it and goes back the other way. That safety's in the middle of the field, wide open for a monster gain. I don't know why Bowers didn't try to turn this upfield more. He is so good after the catcher. At least he was at Georgia. He kind of does stun on this dude, but can't be letting this go down. It's result of play action. These linebackers, like I said, they are robotic. And we're not talking about the coverage from Micah Parsons that everyone was going crazy about 2 years ago, but it's just poor, piss poor. Kind of like that likely sail route we saw against the Chiefs, but there's just no one on it. I'm going to call that a blown coverage.
And the Ravens got their dosage of, having to make a choice with a linebacker on Rashee Rice or whoever it might have been last week. Like, we talked about those plays where it's you run a whip, you put your foot in the ground, you choose which way to go, and you saw some success against it with Simpson. I think Roquan might have gotten victimized on him one time or another. So it's just, it's all about discipline. It's all about staying with your guy, staying in your zone.
Definitely. So I'm going to call that a blown coverage, monster play, middle of the field, all that good stuff. Minshew turns his back. You can see him peek before. And now we're going to see another middle of the field. This is later in the game. This is a big third down, middle of the field vacated. Davante Adams. You can't be doing this later in the game on third down. That's where they want to go. They want to keep Davante Adams happy. He's on that show receiver. They're talking about trading him. Just vacating the middle of the field can't be where you have Gardner Minshew live. You want him having to run. You want him having to step through the pocket. You want him having to throw to the perimeter short. So I'm trying to play inside out and force the ball to the perimeter like we saw in the Madison touchdown. If they can do that, that is outstanding there. But just a couple plays I wanted to highlight of what I thought the Raiders did well. They had some nice runs with Zamir White and things like that, but the Chargers started to do what I'm describing, and then suddenly Minshew is taking sacks. If you hit him, I want to encourage Gardner Minshew to run as much as possible. I want to rush outside in, and I want to play coverage inside out. Hey, step through, go take 7 yards. I want to hit you, all that stuff. He can't hurt you with his legs. So let him hurt you. Make him step up, make him take contact, make him feel this game. I think those are keys for the Ravens. The usage of the tight ends was encouraging. The Raiders offense just they line up. They might have a motion. It kind of stays relatively tight personnel alignment wise to the field. And he just wants to work over the middle of the field, man. And the Chargers weren't disguising coverage. They weren't using a lot of pressure. They just kind of lined up. They get a couple sacks. And then the Raiders had to play from behind, and Gardner can't drive the ball downfield, so they've got to be precise. Once you don't really feel the presence of the run game anymore, it's going to be a little bit easier on you. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip to, I guess, kind of prediction of this before we for just at least the Raiders offense. I think they score 3 times, and by score I mean I'm going to say they score a touchdown. It's clean, it's easy, it's simple enough that if they can get a couple blocks, they can keep a pocket, which they, did struggle with at times. They use some max protection. They keep those tight ends in to block some of those things, which I think was to their detriment at times, because if there's 3 receivers, it makes life easy, especially when guys are just dropping back. But I think they can score 1 touchdown in this game. I think they can maybe kick a couple field goals. Carlson had a big miss there. He's been a pretty good kicker for them. So I think the Raiders score about 13 points, somewhere in that 12, 13, maybe up to 16-point range ultimately. But I think the Ravens are just going to overwhelm them, man. They have Simpson, they have Hamilton for the tight ends. The corners are good. They've got Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson over top. They're going to be disguising coverage. They're really good over the middle of the field, right? They're really good. They funneled the Chiefs. The Chiefs kind of attacked that same area, but the Raiders aren't the Chiefs. Mahomes is getting those balls, whipping those balls. We just did that film breakdown on the jumbo set. They're whipping those balls, perfectly timed, quick. The operation's not that clean. It's a click slower. You can just confuse Minshew a little bit, and he doesn't have the arm talent to hurt you the way that Mahomes does. He doesn't have that elastic release that can just whip and all those things. So I don't see the Raiders having a very good offensive performance.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of right there with you. I think this is a get right game to an extent for a Ravens defense that, like I said, I think they played really admirably and probably pretty good. But it's just those couple of plays that the Chiefs are able to beat you with in terms of Worthy with the 2 touchdowns. And then, like you said there, and like we talked about all week in our analysis since, the Chiefs just do the little things well over and over and over and over. And everyone talks about, oh, everything just breaks right for the Chiefs. How does this keep happening? And it's like, well, if you just do the right thing like 98% of the time, which they do, and they do it very well, you're probably going to win a lot of ball games. It's not about the big plays. It's not about Worthy beating a busted coverage. It's not about him on that end around. It's about all the other little
Raiders
things.
don't have those players in space.
Right. And they don't have that play design either. They don't have a Rashee Rice getting matched up against some Malik Harrison a couple of times. They don't have the creativity of an Andy Reid to do what he does. And they don't have another thing, they're not going to have the Mahomes plays that we talked about where it's 3rd and 19, spins away from a sack, and he's just got the mind meld going on with Kelsey, and he picks up a critical first down there.
If the Raiders have a big play, I'm going to say it's Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker over top early. Minshew lets it go early. They see the Ravens flat-footed, maybe get them in a look where they think they can get the Ravens to expect to run and float a ball over top. That would be what I would look out for with Trey Tucker on the field.
Yeah, and it checks out, too, with the fact that everyone's going to be keying on Adams as far as the wide receiver goes. So when you come out in a personnel package where maybe he's sort of isolated and then Tucker sneaks out, kind of like we saw with Justin Watson and with, Noah Gray, like we talked about that with the Chiefs, where they have all this talent up top, and then it's those plays where they literally design it for like the third option that you're not looking at to just be wide the hell open. Maybe you will get a couple of that here.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing to look out for. And Trey Tucker's on the field. Safeties have to be aware of him. He can really burn. And if Minshew can get into one and float it over top early, like at the top of his drop, that would probably be the danger zone of the one thing you can't let happen in this game. Offensively, man, like we said, just don't turn the football over. We heard Todd Monken talking about being cleaner operationally. Raiders pass rush, probably going to win. It's week 2. Voorhees start 2. Falele at guard start 2. Rosengarten and McCary platooning, and Rosengarten start 2 or game 2, whatever. So I think Lamar Jackson needs to be cognizant of that. And when I say cognizant, maybe have to hang in there, maybe take a little shot. I don't think he loves to do that because, again, that's how the only ways he's gotten hurt is in the pocket. So move the pocket, get the ball out. Try and push the ball downfield a little bit. I want to see kind of the Cliff Kingsbury heat map. It's all, the Ben Roethlisberger heat map. It's all, or maybe Justin Fields, all to the outside early and deep over the top. Open up the middle of the field and see if you can get some mismatches on this linebackers.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to watch how they sort of respond here, because like we keep saying, you have like the absolute hardest opponent in the hardest environment that you could have for week 1. This kind of feels like a handshake, comeback. We'll give you the Raiders for week 2 and see if you can get yourselves right. So
I think that about does it, my friend. And with that, I'm going to go Ravens. I think can score 3 touchdowns and kick a field goal somewhere in that. I'm going to put that at about 20. I think their point total is 25.5. I think the over under in this game is 41.5. So that would put, and I think the spread currently is 8.5. So that would put the Ravens scoring 25.5. So right around, I think it's maybe like 25 or 26 to like 15 or 16 is what Vegas has, somewhere in that range. I'm going to go with the Ravens. Do score that amount almost on the button, somewhere from 24 to 27. So I'll go with 26. And I'm going to say the Raiders score 13 points. I'm going to go 26-13 here.
Yeah, all week I've had in my mind the score 27-17. So I'd be spotting the Raiders 2 touchdowns there. I think that's manageable for 2 halves of football, and then you sprinkle a field goal in there. They get to 17 points. I think the Ravens do score those 3 touchdowns that you mentioned, a couple of field goals from JT. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I'm going to get really in my bag and get bold. I think Justin Tucker hits a field goal from 50 plus in this game. Pretty crazy stuff, I know, but
Pretty crazy stuff there.
whether
My bold prediction is that we see a massive Ravens kick return off of some sort of counter trap or rotating type play. At
what
home,
adjective would you
ball
use to
doesn't
describe?
travel as far in Baltimore off the leg, so I'm hoping we can see a couple more of those dynamic kick returns to go back and study.
You beat me to the punch there. I was gonna ask what adjective you would use to describe it, and you already said dynamic, which is what I had in mind too. Yeah, weather's looking 81 and sunny. Probably not a breath of wind in that building here in mid-September. It's going to be one of those classic Ravens September extended summer type games. I feel like it says 81. It's probably going to be hotter than that in a building with a ton of people. And the sun just baking down onto M&T. So just be prepared. Be prepared, my friends. But it'll be nice. Nice weather.
Be prepared. Well, I think that's a show, my friend. We will be live breaking it down after the game at some point there. Like and subscribe this page. Appreciate everyone for listening and tuning in. Drop your prediction in the comments. And hopefully we're talking about the Ravens getting to 1-1. This is stupid. I was on the Stairmaster yesterday at the gym, and Around the Horn was on. I was reading the captions with my headphones in. And I think it was Michael Wilbon said, like, we've seen it. We've seen the stat. If you go 0-2, you're not making the playoffs a lot. And the Bengals, they think they can go 0-2 and make the playoffs because they've done it. I don't know. The Ravens can't lose to the Raiders. And I was like, okay, Michael, I'll take you up on that. That's good Mike Wilbon logic. I like it.
It's true. And every single time, I feel like since Twitter has been invented, every single time you're entering week 2, I hear the importance of not going 0-2. I feel like we have seen it at this point. The Bengals have probably done it a couple of times now because they just don't play.
It's like 30% of teams to start 0-2 make the playoffs, something like that.
Yeah, but like good teams often aren't starting 0-2, and then when they do, they're good enough to overcome it. It's just
win games make the playoffs is essentially the logic there.
Yeah, like it's tough to start out 0-2 because that is multiple games without a win. That is all we're talking about there, and you're absolutely bang on. As is my guy Mike Wilbon. Incredible, they're still doing that show. I know they're remote and everything, but man, Uncle Tony and Mike, what an iconic duo. I hope we're there someday.
Hopefully, my friend. Hopefully. Another fast fact here: Gardner Minshew had 4.4 air yards per attempt, the second lowest mark of his career in this game, and that's where you got to live. Got to make them beat you after the catch. I think that's kind of the key to the game here.
I will say, fear the middling quarterback with an aesthetic. When Andy Dalton started wearing the hair gel, things skyrocketed. I think Minshew, he started to build the legend of himself a little bit there with Leach at Wazoo, and then he gets into Jacksonville, and it keeps growing and growing. I think Chaz Whitehurst maybe had a couple nice moments there with the touchdown Jesus thing going on. Middling quarterbacks that are not necessarily resigned to that fate, that are trying to build a brand. Ryan Fitzpatrick, you think about, you were talking about him before we got going here on the Thursday Night Football crew. Middling quarterbacks that have an aesthetic going on, that are having their look dialed in, that always scares me a little bit.
It certainly does. God only knows what Gardner Minshew's been doing in Vegas, man. God only knows what that guy's been up to in fucking Las Vegas.
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like he's more of a hunting and fishing kind of guy.
He might be all ball too. He might be all ball. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, there obviously the famous story of him slugging a fifth of whiskey and then beating his own hand with hammers, which that might have been debunked at this point. But
we talked about that last year. We talked about that when I was 10. I dropped a 25-pound weight on my foot, so I wouldn't have to go to football practice because I didn't want to. Me and Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I accidentally dropped a cinder block on my toe. We talked about that. Lost the toenail.
Yep. All right, my friend. Well, I think that about does it. I'm going to go play some poker, watch some Thursday Night Football here with the boys. But thank you guys, everyone, so much for listening. Take us out of here, my friend.
All right. I will give you 3 stacks of high society, and we will get on out of here. Nice playing poker with the Vegas connection, too. Look at you. Very cute. Thank you guys for listening. As he said, if you liked what you heard, go ahead and like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Leave some nice comments. Get the algorithm pumping. Let your friends know if you want to engage with us on social media. It's at Exit52 Podcast on X. I am at Jake Luke. That's LOUQUE. Spenny is at Ravens 4 Dummies. That is the number 4. Exit52 Podcast on Instagram. Also on Twitter, you can follow at Barstool Banks, who's going to be just very rational and very, very happy if this game doesn't get off to a rollicking start. I know he's just going to be, completely just aghast. If things don't get off to a quick start, that guy is going to be, watch out for Owen Wilson in a little movie called Wedding Crashers, reading a certain book. And that is at Barstool Banks once again. Eric at EDITTI22 as Orioles season continues to just slowly melt into the abyss. You can follow him for all that. Taylor at Taylor Smythe 10. Thank you guys once again, and we'll talk to you on the other side.
See ya.
Arrivederci.